Howdy, Sergey Drachev Photo here, and I'm not quite sure how to explain this, but after 2 weeks with Nikon D500 that most people consider basically one of the best APS-C Nikon cameras, I traded that one in and I'm back with slightly smaller D7500. You could ask, how did that happen? But it is actually lighter, you know. Well, I got into trouble at work, you know. So I needed the money, and honestly, because I had this one before, right? So I had D7200, which was doing okay, and then I wanted slightly better focus, so I switched to D7500, and then of course, you know, as in my country, in Russia, they say "Лучшее враг хорошего." The best is the enemy of the good. You know, like the D7500 was a great camera, like the one I had before, and I had it for a couple of weeks, and then I started looking at the options on the D500. And one thing about that camera is, of course, you can program, you know, like AF modes, so you can switch from, let's say, group AF to D25 to D75 with the touch of a button, you know, and they all AF on. So as soon as you touch them, the camera starts focusing. And because my primary goal in changing cameras was improvement of autofocusing performance, I was really, you know, envious of that. And I even emailed Nikon support. I said, am I missing something, or any of these options with autofocus, are they available on the D7500? Not just AF on, but AF on plus area mode, because that's what you have on D500, right? So like a certain button can be assigned not just autofocus, but a specific mode, you know? And Nikon replied that no, those options are only available on D500. And I was so kind of like upset, so I went to the store. I said, you know what, guys, I know I'm not doing this full time, but still, you know, I really like to have all these advanced options. So I gave them 1,200 bucks Canadian, and they gave me a D500. Oh my God! And yeah, you know, it's a good body. It's like big, you know. I like a bigger camera, and the first thing I noticed is that I didn't see any improvement in my images, you know. First of all, now I have a theory about this that I'm willing to try at my next shoot with this D7500. You know, all these experts, right? They say you gotta use the back button focusing. But one thing with these lenses, right? This humongous lens, and mostly I'm shooting at the extreme 500 millimeters, which becomes 750 millimeters. You gotta use stabilization, right? And stabilization comes only into play when you press the shutter button. And actually, some of these experts, they say that's how you save battery life, because, you know, when you're constantly focusing with the shutter button only, your stabilization motor is always engaging, and so your battery runs out fast. But here's a scenario, right? There's so let's say we're using back button focus like we are supposed to, according to these experts again. So I move my lens to, to the maximum 500 millimeters, because I know, let's say the bird is flying and it's far, so right away I turn the camera and the lens in the opposite directions to do like this, you know. So like this is, so I know, like, much faster, right, when you use the camera, but it might not be very good for contacts. So maybe I should use the handle from now on. But anyway, I do it like this, right, and then I start tracking the bird, and I'm just focusing with the back button focus. And then when I'm ready, I start shooting. But what happens is that I suspect you need to give time to the stabilization system to stabilize, right? And I tried different, you know, shutter speeds, so it's all kind of like, you know, a huge learning process. Like, I know a lot of these guys, they're using tripods, you know, with those fluid heads, but I have a tripod, but I don't know. I like to do it handheld. But anyway, so I didn't see, like, all you see with that 10 frames a second on D500 is that now instead of 10 blurry images, you are sorting through 50 blurry images, you know? Like if something is missing in your pictures, maybe it's the technique, or you're doing, let's say, if I suspect, like this is, this back button focusing versus stabilization might be an issue here. So a better camera, like a more expensive camera, is not going to fix it, right? You just need to work on your technique, you know? And so 10 frames a second, too fast for me, you know? Like even 8 frames a second, when you press on the shutter and I'm like doing it very, very gently, camera takes 2 shots. I don't like that, you know? First of all, you increase your number of your shutter actuations. Then when it's time to sell the camera, you have like 1 million actuations, where if you do only 1 shot per press, you got 500,000 actuations. You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't like all these extra actuations, you know? But also, like, again, I upload images and I have like 500 images, you know, like of 5 birds. So I was shooting mostly with D500. I was shooting even like 6 or 8. You know, I programmed my slow continuous to 6, and I only used high continuous, 10 frames a second, only occasionally. So this camera, D7500, has 8, and for me that's more than enough. Like for what I do, I don't care about these tiny small birds flying at 200 miles an hour. I want to shoot like bigger ones, you know, bigger animals, like or like herons, you know, deer, stuff like that. So 8 frames a second, come on. And the other thing is the system, the focusing system. Yeah, D500. Everybody, the first thing everybody says is, oh, geez, it's the focusing system from D5. You know, 153 points. And then the first thing they tell you when you choose a focusing mode, yeah, it's probably best to go with a single point focus. Well, group or maybe D25. Then wait a second. So why do we need 153 points if we're only using like 53? Like this guy I'm watching, Steve Perry. Yeah, I'm never using D153. Mostly I'm in group mode. Sometimes I switch to D25 and occasionally to D75. But he says I never use 153 points like D, that the mode, or especially full auto or 3D. So this one has 51, worked fine on D7200, but this one, most people say that 7500 is still like autofocus performance is still improved because of the new metering system, and they say because of that, that helps the focusing system to perform better because it has this new RGB sensor, right? And also it has a group autofocus. But once again, that was one of the major reasons I upgraded from 7200 to 7500 and then D500 is the group autofocus. The thing with the group autofocus is that it's very, you know, I don't like it when I don't see the point. The point that I'm like my central point, because in group autofocus you have 5 of them, right? And the central one is not visible. And it kind of like, I don't like it. On D500 I ended up using a D25 because that gives you like a square, kind of like a D9 on the smaller, on D7200 and D7500. D25, so you have a single point and then you have a square. And then if you want a slightly bigger square, you go to D75. And I find those were a bit more useful because they're still, the preference is given to your point that you select, you know, and so I don't know. I didn't see like I said, I didn't see any difference in images, in image quality, in sharpness. Joystick, right? A lot of people are saying, oh, geez, the joystick on the back of D500, that's now also will be on the new D850. That joystick, lots of people don't realize that it's closer, like when you're holding the camera, it's closer here, like to your eye, you know. Like first they have the AF on button, and then to the left of that is the joystick. So kind of you have to poke yourself in the eye. And when you shoot, you know, fast flying birds, trust me, you don't have time to move the joystick. Like if you see the bird flying at 60 miles an hour across your frame, I forget all these other points. I use the center point. I don't care. My main concern is to catch the bird, at least make the eyes sharp, you know. And so I don't know. Like I always thought it was a bit overpriced, you know. And then from what I saw, yeah, the body, you know, the functions, but I don't think it's worth like, at least to me, it's not worth, you know, $1,200 Canadian, which is like 900 US, you know. And so I went back to the store because it was within 1 month of the purchase, and I said, guys, I'm sorry, if you want, charge me some kind of a monetary penalty, but I want to give you this one and get back a 7500. And I said, I'll take your full warranty. They have this extended warranty plan, which is actually very good, because it covers your like a lemon policy, and you can do exchange if that fault happens like 3 times. You know, let's say something breaks and it keeps breaking, they give you a new camera. You know, it's like a really good policy. And so I said, yeah, I'll give me a brand new camera with 3-year warranty. So now the total is 2 from the factory plus 3 extended. So now I have 5 years warranty on this bad boy, you know. And I just set it up. Oh yeah, one last thing. Something that there's a lot of bad press about this D7500. You search online, nobody likes it, you know. But then if you look at Amazon, like US Amazon, because there's much more buyers over there than Amazon.ca, this camera gets a 4.7 mark, like of approval, versus 4.6 of D500. And now I was checking like this store Henry's, they have a bunch of them open box, you know, like it says Nikon D500 open box, Nikon D500 open box. So people are buying them and then you know, returning, because now this one came out. Unless you're shooting, I don't know, like sports professionally, this is a great camera, the 7500, you know. But one thing that nobody seems to mention on the internet, here I use this nifty napkin from Starbucks, you know, top writing material. I like using them to make notes. They say that this camera has the same sensor and the same processor as a D500, but for some reason, again, I trust these numbers. Like a lot of people don't like DxO Mark, you know, from France that test these cameras, but I find that when I don't know, I trust their scores with lenses, and what they do is in the camera section, DxOMark.com, they rate cameras by ISO performance, then there's color bits, like dynamic range, and this ISO performance, they call it sports. It's basically top quality picture, right? Like it's certain, I forgot the actual technical characteristics, but they use the same you know, quality. Like what's the maximum ISO the camera can still produce a good quality image, and good quality is defined as, like, you know, in real terms, like in factual terms, not just like scientific good quality. And so if you look at this ISO performance, and it's called sports, when you look at cameras on DxO Mark, there's like 4 columns: sports, landscape, which is dynamic range, and then portraits, which how many shades of one color is in there, right? Like how rich is the colors, stuff like that. And so, but the most important, of course, is ISO, or ISO, right, as people say. Because let's say I was actually just looking at one picture. I saw a crane, you know, this white sandhill crane, and it's flying not too fast, you know, and I have 10 frames a second on this D500, but the sun was coming kind of like from the left, and the head of the bird was in shade all the time, you know. And this D500, that's, by the way, another complaint that lots of people seem to have, is too much grain, you know. Even at moderate ISO, like 800, there's a lot of grain in the images produced by this D500. And so yeah, so I think that even shooting during the day, this ISO performance is very important, because that's what makes the, like, I'm looking at the eye of this bird, and because the head was in the shade, you know, it's all blurry, you know. And of course here, the better the ISO performance of the camera, it would be like, then it would be sharper, you know. And so I just wrote down some of these Nikon cameras and their scores, like on this sports metric, right? Like the top ISO at which the picture is still top quality, right? So D750 is the champion with a 2956 ISO. Number 2 is D810, 2853. So ISO 2853, D810 still produces a quality image. Now, place number 3 goes to D7500, ladies and gentlemen, with 1483 ISO. Next one is D5500, which before this one was the best for crop sensor camera, for crop sensor Nikons, was 1438. Now D5300 is 1338, D7200 ISO 1333, and D500, the overpriced, this overpriced camera, is 1324. So anything over 1324, the image is already shaky, right? Like in terms of ISO. So imagine, so D500 is 1324, D7500 is 1483. That's 150 ISO difference, you know. That's already, you know, that's a lot. And the only two cameras that are worse, this new D5600 is actually only 1306, and D7100, like the older model, was 1250 ISO, right? And actually, I think I saw it. I saw that there was less grain when I was shooting with this camera, and I believe the actual image quality is better because of that on the D7500. But D500 is still the best in terms of functionality and all these customization, you know. And of course, if you do need that crazy 10 frames a second, yeah, that's the camera. But for me, especially with this huge difference in price, so I just gave them that one back. They processed the refund, and so after taxes, 1,000 Canadian dropped back into my account, which made me extremely happy. So the first thing I did, of course I charged the battery and I set up the camera. So for now I'll try to use the regular shutter button without back button focusing, because I want to prove this theory of mine that that's what can cause blurry images in my shooting, is that stabilization is not enabled soon enough when I'm tracking a flying bird. And with the shutter speed being used for focus, I think that should take care of that. And also I did a quick fine-tuning. Like this camera, just like D500, has auto AF tune, and so I set it on a tripod, and like Steve Perry recommends, I did checked the focus 12 times at 500 millimeters, because that's where I'm using it most, and everything was plus. Basically it was front focusing, right? Because I needed to add, so there were like 12 different numbers. The lowest was +4, the highest was +11, and then Steve says cross out the highest and the lowest, and then add all these numbers together and divide them by how many of them you have. Let's say 10, right? If you crossed out 11th and 12th, and so I came up with I think it was like close to 8. So I set up auto AF on +8. So this should make it a bit more precise. And I'm off tomorrow. Just came back from US in my semi truck, and I was looking for a location where to go, and I always wanted to go to Hamilton, Ontario, because when you drive over that big sky bridge, I always see lots of birds in there. Like they have these tiny small islands in there, and you can see them from the beach. And I always see people walking there, biking, and I was just trying to find where do they park their cars, you know. And then I was looking at Google Maps, and I found that these two parks in there, right at the water, under the bridge, and big spot parking, you know, parking. Okay, I checked it on Street View. I think you have to pay for it. It's like a paid parking, but it's kind of like municipal parking, and then you can, you know, walk near the water, go to they have a lighthouse over there, so it's going to be cool. So I'm going to take my GoPro with me, and we'll do one of those, you know, photo walks where I show you the scenery and I take shots. And so this will be the first time with the new D7500, number 2 now, right? But this is it. So that's why just kind of an explanation why I thought I would let you guys know that, you know, don't trust like 100% into all these reviews and stuff like that. Check what works for you, you know. I think your technique and your skills is much more important than the piece of equipment, you know. Of course, the new equipment is always better, and actually this camera it's a newer model, right? Because it came out in 2017, and like I said, I think they tweaked something in the processor, so the ISO performance is better. Whereas the D500 is a last year model, right? And it's always good to go with the newest camera, because they always change something there. Like some people say, oh, it has only one card slot. I don't care about that, you know. Like I used 5000 series cameras, you know, 5200, 53, 5500. They all have one slot, and nobody died, you know. And 4K, tilting screen, touch screen, and also actually another thing they improved in here compared to D500 is that the touch screen now can be used when you work with menus, whereas on D500 the touch function only worked when you were scrolling through pictures, or where you can enlarge, you know, zoom in. But as soon as you switch to menus where you actually change stuff, it did not work. Like here, I was just adding my you know, copyright and comments, like the artist information, and I was just using my finger to type the, you know, the letters instead of just using this button over here, right? So don't believe those people that say that this is a bad camera. I think it's a great camera for the money, you know, like $16.99 over here in Canada, so $1,700 plus tax. It's about $2,000 Canadian. So probably what, like $1,600 US? No, that cannot be right. So 1,000 is about 750 US. Huh, I thought I saw it in the States for like $12.96. Anyway, I think it's a good camera. Grab it, check it out, enjoy it. Thanks for watching.